Today, we're diving deep with a career transformation specialist from a small mountain town in the Pacific Northwest. She has carved a unique path from guiding polar exhibitions to kite skiing across Greenland to pioneering recruitment in tech hubs. Her core area of expertise is career coaching, but even more specifically, she specializes in helping individuals transition towards more meaningful work in the outdoor industry. I would like to welcome Katie Crafts of KC Approach, who is going to open her playbook and help you identify and land your dream job in the outdoor industry. Thank you for joining me today, Katie.
Awesome. Thanks, Tony. That was a very flattering intro. I appreciate it.
Katie, can you start by sharing what led you to focus on helping others transition into the outdoor industry?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it comes from my own personal career. I was in recruitment starting back in 2010 when advertising tech companies were, opening up every other week and you had easy access to the CEO at those companies. And it was a really fun time to learn recruitment, get my feet under me with executive search, and work for a company where I had direct access, or where I created direct access to CEOs of emergent tech companies. I worked at that company for a while, and before that I worked in nonprofit management, and most of my post-college life was pretty heavy on career focus, learn skills, get established, earn a solid income. And when I was 29, I started to really question and be reflective on what I was doing in this world and who I would become if I stayed on these paths. And there came this point where I just wanted to become a little more skilled, get the skills and talents that I respected and the people who I knew from the outdoor world, be savvy about the planet, learn how to tie knots and how to drive boats, and just kind of get these skills that I knew that my computer-based work wouldn't lead me to. And so I did one of those career upheavals, threw my desk upside down, metaphorically speaking, and started to work in Antarctica as a guide on a ship, and worked my way up in that polar guiding industry. Ended up working for the National Geographic ships in Antarctica as a lecturer and boat driver and hiking guide, and led trips in East Greenland, which is one of the most remote coastlines on the planet because that's where the Arctic sea ice drains out of. So led 10-day wilderness-based trips over there, and then guided trips in the Canadian Arctic where we experienced polar bear mania. And I really immersed myself in the planet, what happens in the planet, how the planet works, kind of piece together the natural systems, and also skill building. When I was on those trips and working those seasons, I learned so much from my colleagues. I learned so much about the boats I was driving, the boats I was on, the bigger ships that we kind of lived on. I also had these great off seasons where I'd have, 1 month or 4 months off, but I wanted to be constantly upskilling. So I did things like a 30-day NOLS expedition, an instructor course in Alaska, where for 30 days we were on a glacier in Alaska, and just kind of learned how to be a little more competent and hardy and skill-based. And that was my motivation for working in the outdoor industry. I felt like I wanted skills that working in front of a computer just wouldn't give me. And by cracking into the outdoor industry, I was able to get the skills and kind of become the superwoman version of myself that I kind of thought I could be, but I needed to get onto a different path for that to happen.
So then how did you transition from all that experience and all the upskilling that you spent many years working towards into becoming a consultant that helps people transition their career into the outdoor industry?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And it kind of takes me into what I was prioritizing at different points in my life. And I think this is something that job seekers of all ages and experience levels experience, is that our priorities shift in our lives. What I tend to see is that there's basically 3 buckets of priorities that we can use our career for. We're either earning or learning or impacting. So we can be earning a lot of money and really focus on that earning stage of our career, or we can be learning and really expanding our skill set, or we can take the knowledge that we have and use it toward an impact, a cause that we're passionate about, or a department that we're really strong at and can help shape. And so my priorities in my life went from learning back into earning because you don't earn money being a polar expedition guide. And so I just decided that I wanted a little bit more stability in my life, which meant some housing stability, meant some financial stability, and I wanted to get back into recruitment. So I spent a couple of years doing that. But then, as you and people listening to this podcast know, last year, recruitment really took a hit. And in 2021, we saw recruitment was off the charts. We had to, give crazy sign-on bonuses for people who are taking new positions to pull them out of their companies. But then all of that switched on its head, and there was no longer a need for another hiring asset out there. So that coincided with me relaunching my recruitment firm. And instead of feeling like I was bringing something that was needed into the market, I realized that we just don't need more recruitment assets right now. So I took the knowledge that I learned as a recruiter over those years and combined it with my personal experience doing this major career transformation toward the outdoor industry and relaunched the KC approach. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm providing people with action-oriented tools to help them make major transitions in their careers.
On a daily basis, and you know this because we've talked about it many times and how you can help these individuals, but people will reach out to me and the team here at Highline Outdoor Group, and they want to get in the outdoor industries. We kind of put people into two very high level buckets. One is someone who's in the industry, and then someone who's not in the industry. And today, the goal is to help the people. This really should help everybody, but the goal is primarily how to help someone get into the outdoor industry, because that typically is the biggest challenge. From the outside, getting in is very difficult. But once you're in, you have exposure, your network builds, you have exposure to all these different amazing paths you can take. And so something I was thinking about before this that I wanted to ask you is, for someone who feels stuck in their current job and dreams of a role in the outdoor industry with a brand or in the area of recreation, what are the first steps they should take to align their passion with their profession?
That's a great question, aligning your passion with your profession. What I help people do when we start working together is really figure out what those career pillars are that they're looking for at this stage in their career. And again, this recognizes that our priorities shift typically throughout the course of our careers. Sometimes we're earning, sometimes we're learning, sometimes we're impacting. So it makes sense that our priorities would shift throughout the course of our career, and what those pillars are would look different at different stages of our career or of our lives. So what I help people, the way I get people started with that when they're kind of like, the world is my oyster and I don't know what I can do, or they're kind of like, I just want to do something meaningful and get out from under these fluorescent lights, but I don't know what it could look like. The first step is figuring out what the foundation is of what they're looking for. So to do that, I have a worksheet and I'll describe it to you right now. Basically, it's kind of a visual target with a bullseye in the middle and a couple outer rings. And then it's cut into some different pie pieces, each with a category. One category is job title. Another is salary and compensation. Another is skills and impact. Another is environmental, daily environment, basically. And then a couple other categories as well. And I have people write in there, in the center, they write what's really important, what they're looking for, and which ones are their top priorities. So for example, if someone is in an earning stage of their career, they might put salary is critical and I'm looking for 150K. And that's something that I have to find in my next role. And they might be deprioritizing impact. So they might say, put on the outer ring something like under skills and impact, they might say something like, I'd love to work for a conservation organization, but that's on the outer ring, so it's a lower priority. So basically, I have people identify and write what's important to them or critical to them in the inner ring, and then what they'd like to see in the next ring, and then things that would be potential deal breakers or question marks for them if they found it. And in doing that, people tend to walk away with a sense of what their priorities are. They kind of have that clarity around, I guess I am in an earning stage of my career right now. So that means that, I would love to work for a conservation. At the moment, I need to prioritize earning more money. And so I'm going to really hone my focus around that. Or vice versa. They might say, I've been in an earning stage and I am just ready to impact and I have all these passions that I care about. I'm targeting Surfrider organization and I want to clean the beaches and really have a positive impact on my environment. And so the salary can be downplayed at that point. And the next step from that worksheet is then using it as a hub to brainstorm. And I have people have 3 different categories for brainstorming: companies, job title, and people. And just keep kind of a post-it note in the background of their home or in their office where they can come and go and jot down ideas of companies, job titles, or people that they see working in that space or that could get them to their space. People can be a fun one. You know, on podcasts, we hear guests or we might read articles that are intriguing and get our gears turning. And those are just people who usually are interested in sharing their perspective. And I myself have reached out to several authors and podcast guests over the course of my career. And sometimes it's created new ideas for me. Sometimes it's created new paths for me. Sometimes they've helped facilitate introductions for me in my career. So it kind of is just an action-oriented, energizing way to create momentum toward those foundational pillars that someone might be looking for at that point in their career.
Wow, that is a really good way to help someone organize where their priorities lie, because the outdoor industry is diverse, right? The roles are ranging anywhere from marketing to, like you said, Surfrider, so conservation roles, to adventure guiding. And if you're in an earning stage in your life, it's probably not adventure guiding, right? It's conservation at a higher level or an executive level. There's definitely earning to be done. It's not the highest paying role, but then when you get into the brand and the company side of the business, right, then from a marketing to sales to product development to supply chain to DTC, those roles are more significant in the compensation. And so I really appreciate what you said about how, you know, some of these lesser known opportunities, once an individual gets clear on what stage and what they need to accomplish and what they need to earn, then they can really start targeting what's the right area within the industry. So that leads me to a question. Katie, what are the most common challenges or misconceptions that people have when trying to break into the outdoor industry, and how do you help them navigate these hurdles?
You know, I think the one that I most often see is just a lack of understanding of what happens on the other side of the interview process. I think a lot of job seekers haven't had exposure or haven't thought about what it means to be a hiring manager and someone who's doing the hiring, and really someone who's looking to build a team of highly qualified people and really wanting to hit that nail on the head. But also, a lot of hiring managers aren't necessarily trained in how to hire. And so they tend to hire, you would know this better than anyone, they tend to hire based on what the vibe is like, or, you know, if you're referred and there's some familiarity with your career, that can be a really big booster to a job seeker. So since I've been an executive recruiter off and on since 2010, a lot of the work that I do is really kind of demystifying the job hunt and reminding people that on the other side of the table, it's just humans. I know there's been a lot of talk about ATSs and what a barrier they are and how we have to get around the AI systems and all these things. And also, it's always humans who are screening the resumes. It's always humans who are making a decision on who they hire. Recruiting is one of the hardest sales and hardest, most emotional decisions people are. You're helping people through some of the most emotional decisions people will make in their career. You're helping a job seeker decide that this is the right job for them. And you're helping a manager decide that this is the right person to help them and their team do their job. And so job seekers can sometimes get this frantic energy of, oh my gosh, I have to master the ATS and answer these questions like a robot. And a lot of what I do is really just helping remind people that you're writing to a human. Your resume needs to stand out for a human's eyes and a human's attention span. And when you have an interview, you're just talking with another human who's just trying to decide if you can do the job.
You're absolutely right. And, you know, there's a couple of things that you said that, you know, when you talk about the seriousness of the recruiting and the seriousness of the individual that is going to make a career change, which is, let's be honest, it's one of the most sizable life changes you can possibly make, is a new career or changing organizations. And something a lot of people that I've had exposure to over the past 12 years of recruiting exclusively in the outdoor industry is when people ask me about this business, the one thing that I try to share with them is there's a very serious side to this business, and moving a family who has young children from one side of the country to the other side of the country, that's a very, very big, important move for them. And at the same time, if you're hiring for a position on your team and you're the hiring authority or the CEO, and you need to bring in someone who's going to essentially operate as your right hand, I've got to be honest, hiring is, for myself, in any organization and any hiring manager, is one of the most difficult things on earth, because you need this to be right. And sometimes we get into, I don't want to say overthinking, but you get into analysis paralysis. Mm-hmm. But the reality of it is such a difficult thing to do. And then, having someone, being able to work with someone like yourself, where you help someone transition, or working with an executive recruiter like myself, we help smooth all those points that can ultimately be very challenging. And there's so many small points that an opportunity from a hiring manager perspective, or from the candidate, if something doesn't feel right, it can turn off the process or the interest almost immediately. You also said, navigating we'll call it the dark hole of ATSs. We'll get there. I've got something at the end I want to share with everyone about that component of the hiring process. And for those who don't know what an ATS is, it's an applicant tracking system. It's where you apply to a job. But again, we'll get there at the end of this. So, Katie, I want to ask you this, and for anyone who's listening today, can you tell me this, of all the steps that someone needs to take and should be taking to start progressing their job search into the outdoor industry, what are 3 tactical steps they could get off this podcast and they can start today?
Let's see, if I were honing it down to 3 for someone who's just starting their job search, I think the first one is really hone in on your personal career branding. If you're making a transition into the outdoor industry, you probably have skills that are transferable, but the bullet points on your resume are probably highlighting how you achieve those, or how you perform those skills for an industry that will be unfamiliar to the people reading your industry. So it's your job as a job seeker to go, this is what I am all about. I am all about risk management, leadership, and communication. And this is how it's come out in my past career. And those 3 key skills are very valuable skills for any industry, and especially in the outdoor industry. So if you can figure out what the main skills are that are valuable toward your future employer, and how you've performed those skills in your past career, that really helps kind of create some linear connection for what will be a nonlinear transition. So get clear on your personal branding and communicate that visibly and contextually in your resume. The main tip I have for that is underneath your job title and company, you can put bold subheaders of what those key skills are that you want to highlight, and then put 1 or 2 bullet points underneath each of those. So a quick visual scan of your resume goes, Tony O'Neill, recruiter, problem solver, communication, high output. And you'd have 1 or 2 bullet points supporting each of those. So I might not even read those bullet points as a recruiter. I might just skim it and go, okay, he's got those skills, and it looks like there's a couple numbers thrown on here to back that up. Great, let's chat with him. So really pulling that front and center. Another strategy I would recommend is get on LinkedIn. And I think that job seekers are starting to use LinkedIn a lot more, but I still see a lot of people kind of trying to demystify what LinkedIn is and how to use it. The 2 main ways I recommend job seekers use LinkedIn is 1, to create inroads and familiarity to your target companies, and 2, to create some familiarity with the companies that you're applying for. So I think I see a lot of job seekers go into their job search with one strategy of applying to open job postings. And as a recruiter and as a scrappy networker myself, I've seen both professionally and personally people create jobs for people they want to work with. So I recommend that job seekers split that into about 70-30. 70% of your job search is networking and creating inroads to your target companies and being really proactive about creating familiarity with where you want to be. And then 30% can be applying to existing jobs. That's where sometimes you can get a quick win, but also it's pretty common for your resume to kind of get ignored, especially if you're making a transition and your background is not a linear direct fit into the job position. You're a lot more likely as a job seeker to create a connection with a person, and they'll see that they want to work with you if you're really pursuing that networking. LinkedIn is a great tool for that. I have some tips on my website, actually. We can send it over in the show notes if people want to dig into that a little bit more, but be active and be seen on LinkedIn. And I think that really is the third one is network, network, network. Network on LinkedIn, network by going to conferences, network with people who are, colleagues of colleagues. And I recommend people do this all throughout their career. The best time to look for a job is when you don't need to be looking for a job, because sometimes those can take a little bit longer to nurture the relationship. But those tend to be the best jobs that we have in our careers. It's ones that have kind of grown organically, grown from a personal connection, grown because we find someone who we want to work with and eventually the right role opens on their team, grown because we identified a target company and we stayed on their radar for a couple of years and then finally the right job opened, or they were just like, you know what? Tony's awesome. I want to hire him onto my team. Let's create the right role for him. I've seen it happen.
This is really great, Katie. I appreciate how you share these. Just to summarize, so obviously, personal branding is key. And if you don't have a LinkedIn page or you don't have an updated profile, it's time to get on it. And you're being judged. I hate to say that, but it's the truth, by headhunters and hiring managers by the way you present yourself. And if you're a marketing or brand person, your LinkedIn profile should be a 10 out of 10. I really like what you shared about putting bullet points on your resume very close to the top that align with what that organization, what the organization needs this person to have in their background. And, you talked about, the third one was talking about networking, right? Create familiarity with companies and see what they're talking about. See what the hiring managers, are they active on LinkedIn? Are they making posts? And so I think that 70% networking and 30% applying to existing jobs is really sound advice. And we will have some of this information in the show notes that'll connect directly back to the KC Approach website. So that was very helpful, Katie. I appreciate you sharing that.
Well summarized. Thank you for that.
It is right now, you have to stand out more than ever in the past. And I want to give some grace, though, to these internal recruiters, whether they are full-time talent acquisition company recruiters. And I want to define so you know what I mean. I'm an external recruiter. My terms are executive recruiter, executive search consultant. Primarily, people call me a headhunter. But then you have internal recruiters, and these are people that work for organizations like Columbia Sportswear or Yeti Coolers, and their job is to manage a series of jobs and then the applicants that come in. And if the company's a little bit smaller, they're going to have an HR manager or director that's handling not only applicants and recruiting, they're handling payroll, they're handling employee compliance, they're handling a lot. So what I want to share with everyone who is listening today, have some grace on these people. What they're being asked to do in their role is nearly impossible. And that's why companies hire people like me and Highline Outdoor Group to help them with the process, because it's very difficult.
I also think a lot of job seekers, I've seen recently a rhetoric around that's kind of anti-recruiter. And as a recruiter myself, I'm biased toward it, but also I've benefited so much from having recruiters in my life. And from a job seeker, if you can switch that narrative around and see recruiters as your friends, recruiters are, they can be the one who influences the hiring manager's decision. An external recruiter like you have massive amounts of information. about salary levels, about what makes a resume stand out. You're an asset to a job seeker. And a job seeker, if they're really leaning into that as a resource, they'll get so much more information about the company, about what their salary, how their salary compares to other people with similar expertise, about what they can do to their resume to really stand out for the roles that you're helping them on. So I always recommend to job seekers, recruiters are your friends. Try to work with them, try to make sure that you're likable to them. Those aren't just plug and play interviews. You're really trying to present a good face for who you are as an employee to someone who's very influential on that final decision. So spend the time to get to know your recruiter and to really leverage them as a resource for your job hunt.
Yeah. And of course, I'm biased also, but just going back to your third bullet point, it's about networking, right? Being made aware of opportunities is completely based on relationships. And so my suggestion to anyone out there who has been approached by a recruiter or is reaching out to one on their own behalf is it's just like anything else. You have good doctors, not so great doctors, good lawyers and not so great lawyers. But when you have a recruiter that you believe you can trust or is referred to you, that's a worthy part of your network to have, because you never know when they're going to have an opportunity that would be really interesting to you, or if you need an opportunity. There's another podcast that I've been listening to, and it's called The Outdoor Industry Biz. And the host, his name is Rick Saez. And Rick, I apologize if I have said your last name wrong, but I've started to listen to your podcast, and I think there's some great information, but there was specifically something that he was talking to one of his guests recently about. And people want to get in the outdoor industry. It's not the same. I'm not saying that there's not other industries that are super desirable to be in, because there certainly is. But what he said is sometimes when you're trying to get into the outdoor industry, you maybe have to take a step back, or you may have to do a role that you didn't think is exactly what you wanted to do. What helps you out is, one, you now have a foot in the door. And like I said a little bit earlier, you then get exposure to more individuals. You build a bigger network within the industry. And so just think about that as you're on your job search and you know what you're looking for. There may be an opportunity that may not be exactly what you're looking for, and that could be a good foot in the door, an entry point in for you. So that was really well stated by Rick, and something I wanted to share on knowing that we were going to talk about this today.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'll add to that too. It's a lot easier to make a change at your existing company than it is to step into a new role at a different company. So if there are ways that you can get closer to your target job in your current role, seize that opportunity and chase that internally in your current position. For example, if you're looking to be a first-time manager, look for projects where you can take the lead and really be seen and get experience as a leader. And then you can use that on your resume as you apply to management positions. Or if you're looking for, a job in product management, see if you can leverage if you want to be a product manager at Yeti or North Face or, one of those major outdoor brands that's so appealing. See if you can, within your current company, get a little bit closer to that department and use your current position to get closer to where you want to go. I know sometimes that means you might stay at your current company that you're trying to leave a little bit longer, but if you're really using that to build on your career and get you closer to your target, it can be time well spent.
Completely agreed. There was something else this morning when I was thinking about our conversation. Is we talk about internal talent acquisition specialists or recruiters and HR leaders. When they put a position out there, right? They have a huge, sometimes, and I'll get to this in a moment. Sometimes they have a huge amount of interest, a lot of applications, and so a couple things to think about when you're starting your searches and of an organization that is hiring or maybe isn't even hiring. But first off, almost everyone's on LinkedIn right now. So you can figure out who's the hiring manager, who would this role report to? Or if you took your skills from outside the industry and wanted to apply them in the industry, it's pretty easy to find out the person in an organization that's of interest to you, that here is where your role would report to. And if you don't know someone in the organization, or if you do know specifically, if you know someone in the organization, ask them to vouch for you. Ask them to send a note to that hiring manager. And if you don't know someone in that organization, but maybe you know someone who does know that hiring manager, ask them to vouch for you and to send a note or to reach out to the hiring manager on your behalf. Again, when we look at these applications, so this is just from this morning, and I want to just share a few statistics that were quite interesting. All right, so these are opportunities right now. There's a company called OnX Maps, and they're hiring for a brand marketing manager. It's in Montana or can be remote. So remote, they're going to have more applicants. They have 535 applicants. Okay, so if you apply in that job, what I was talking about earlier with the applicant tracking systems, you're going to go through the system. An internal head of HR or recruiter then has to sift through 500 resumes. To be honest, it's nearly impossible. Now we've got, this is pretty interesting. There is a regional sales manager at Pure Fishing in North Carolina. And this role specifically has 267 applicants. We've got a brand manager for performance products at the North Face, 486 applicants. And now, again, you keep hearing these large numbers, you've got to stand out. And that's where, some of the guidance that Katie is giving you about networking and about your personal brand, and then using everyone in your network that can help, where someone who believes in you can reach out to that hiring manager and let them know that you exist and that you're interested in the role and you're interested in exploring it. And then you have a job. You've got the Pros Closet, which is also close to Denver. Well, that's been up for 3 weeks and only has 15 applicants, right? That might be an opportunity right there where you don't have as much competition. So think about organizing it. Figure out who the hiring manager is. Send them an email. If you don't have someone who can vouch for you, send them an email that says why you believe you should be considered for the role. And if you don't hear back, maybe your next step is then try to connect them on LinkedIn. And your intro message, basically you're saying, I'm hopeful to be considered for this opportunity on your team. So you have all these different ways that you can stand out from these hundreds, if not thousands of applicants here to the job that you're interested in.
Yeah, make it easy on the recruiters. They're just trying to do their job well and hire the right people. So the more that you can do to customize your resume, to show the linear connections between what you've done and how you'll perform in this role, the easier it will be for a recruiter to say, of course, this person's moving forward. As a recruiter, when I've been hiring for jobs that have that many applicants, there's clear yeses and there's clear nos, and there's usually a lot of maybes. And when I have clear yeses, I don't spend time on the maybes. So make sure that you're making your resume a clear yes. And that can mean really deciphering the job description to see what kind of skills they'll be screening for and targeting your resume toward that job. I've seen job seekers have a lot more success when they apply for fewer positions, but really research that job and that company and target their resume and really target their networking efforts around that position versus, doing the easy apply on LinkedIn. And I think that's where a lot of those numbers come from, is people who are easy apply, easy apply, easy apply.
That's what I'm looking at right now.
Yeah. And they'll fit into that maybe bucket, and they probably will be screened over by the recruiters in-house who have some obvious yeses. So take the time to customize your resume, to look into the company, create that familiarity and those inroads. And even on LinkedIn, if the company is using LinkedIn to source their candidates, you'll show up higher on the list for recruiters if you have more connections into that company. So you can kind of hack that as a job seeker by following the company on LinkedIn and pulling up some of their employees and following them as employees. And it shows that you have some connections there. And I recommend people do that to their employees and get a sense for what they're posting and look for posts where they can comment back and add some value in that, and then reach out to those people with a connection request with a note that says something like, hey, my name might look familiar. I've been commenting on your post for a bit. I really appreciate your perspective on X, Y, and Z. And that way, when you make that connection, it has a little more value and personal connection. So really take that time to research the company, the people, the job, and it can really pay off for job seekers.
That's such good advice, Katie. As we near the end of, at least for today, our session together, the one thing I want to leave everyone, just a quick summary of all this, is 1, get clear on what you're looking for. 2, your network is the most valuable thing that you've got. And then your personal brand is very important to that equation. And when you think of the numbers that I just shared with you, these job postings that are on LinkedIn right now, you've got to stand out. And if you just think about your network and you think about how you can approach the hiring manager or the internal recruiter who is working on the job, that will definitely help you amongst the hordes of 486 applicants for a brand manager role. So that's all the time that we have today. I want to thank Katie so much for coming on and sharing such impactful advice. And just remember, be as kind as you can to everyone out there, but especially be kind to yourself. And I hope you have a great day.